We called it a family meeting. That's what Amber said when she texted me. Can you be home by 6? Family meeting. Nothing dramatic. That last part was important to her. Nothing dramatic. As if saying it out loud could tame whatever was waiting beneath the surface. By the time I got home, the sun was beginning to drag shadows across the living room floor. Tucson light has a way of bleaching everything, even the lies. You can't hide much under that sky. I walked in to find them already at the table. Amber and her son Zach. She sat with her hands folded neatly in front of her, her nails perfectly trimmed, a glass of water sweating beside her phone. Zach was slouched, hood up despite the heat, one earbud dangling, scrolling through his phone with the same bored disdain he gave to everything that didn't feed him. My seat, the one I always took, end of the table closest to the hallway, was empty. Waiting. I sat down and waited for someone to speak. Amber sighed before she said anything. We just need to get on the same page, she started, her voice already pre-apologizing for what she was about to say. Things have been tense lately, and I feel like everyone's trying to control everything, and that's not working. Zach didn't look up. I leaned back slightly. What do you mean by everyone? She didn't meet my eyes. I just mean, it's been hard for Zach, adjusting, and I think maybe you've been pushing too hard lately. With school, with the car stuff. You're not his. She hesitated. That moment, that breath she took. It was the sound of the knife being twisted slowly. Then she said it. You don't get to decide what happens to my kids. That phrase, that fracture. It was like watching someone close a door in your face. Slow and deliberate. Not in anger. Not in haste. But like they were finally correcting a mistake they had let go on too long. Zach smirked then. Didn't even pause his scrolling. Just muttered, almost under his breath, but loud enough to land where it needed to. He's not my dad. 5 words. Just 5. But they felt like years. I looked at Amber. She didn't flinch. Didn't defend me. Didn't even acknowledge what he'd said. And that silence, that cowardice, said more than any insult could. I stood up slowly, my chair scraping the tile. My hands were steady. I didn't shout. I didn't demand anything. I didn't remind them what I had paid for, what I had carried. No point. The truth was simple. If you have to remind them, they've already forgotten. I walked out the front door, closed it quietly behind me. The sky had turned the color of old rust. Dry wind moved across the street, lifting dust in little twisters. I stood there for a moment, looking at the house. That 2-story slice of desert suburbia I had poured years into. Mortgage in my name. Upgrades done with my hands. Roof patched in July heat while they sat inside with the AC blasting, never once offering a glass of water. And now it wasn't mine. Not in any way that mattered. I got in my truck and started driving. Didn't know where to go. Just drove. Past the Circle K. Past the high school where I used to wait for Zach when he had soccer practice. Past the tire shop where I'd spent my weekends rotating the same set of discount wheels I'd bought him for his 16th birthday. I kept the radio off. I didn't want sound. I wanted silence. And in that silence, one thing became clear. If I mean nothing to them, it's time to remove myself from everything I helped build. When I got back to the apartment, the one I kept on the edge of town for work trips, the one Amber called my escape hatch, I didn't sit down. I didn't unpack. I went straight to the laptop. No hesitation. No second guessing. I opened the files, the tabs, the payment schedules, the shared folders, the accounts I had once gladly opened for the family. And I began to disappear. One click at a time. The internet? Gone. The phone plans? Cancelled. The car insurance? Split off. Her name, now her problem. Streaming services? Logged out. Tuition? Frozen. Zach's prepaid gas card? Deactivated. The cloud storage Amber used for family photos? Deleted. Emergency fund for medical bills? Closed and transferred. By midnight, I had reversed every thread that tied me to that house. That family. They didn't know it yet, but the power had shifted. Because everything they took for granted, the comfort, the ease, the invisible safety net, had one thing in common. Me. I didn't sleep that night, just sat on the apartment balcony, drinking cheap black coffee, watching the lights of the city flicker like neurons trying to remember something long forgotten. The next morning, I imagine the confusion began. The Wi-Fi would have gone first. Zach screaming about his router. Amber fumbling with her phone, trying to reset the password. Then the calls would start. Credit cards declined. A call from the university's billing office. An alert from the streaming services. And the first time she tried to log into the medical portal, only to find her credentials locked out, that's when she'd realize. This wasn't a glitch. This was intentional. This was a message. And I didn't send it in words. I sent it in silence. I imagine her face when she tried to call me and found the number blocked. I imagine Zach storming through the house, throwing blame around like confetti, never once realizing he had thrown away the one person who kept the machine running. Later that day, her phone would ring again. A different number this time. A voice she didn't recognize. A voice that said, "Do you want the temporary solution or the permanent one?" She wouldn't understand the question right away. But she would soon. Because once you teach people to live in comfort, they forget who built the shelter. And when that shelter collapses, they look around for someone to blame. But I was gone. Not just from the accounts. Not just from the house. From them. Gone from the dinner table where I used to sit. Gone from the background of photos I was never quite centered in. Gone from the family chats that were never really about me. They thought I was a foundation. But I was a fuse. And they lit it with their words. The apartment smelled like drywall and sawdust. One of those prefab units on the far edge of Phoenix, where the desert starts to forget itself, where strip malls rise out of scorched gravel and everything feels rented, temporary, unloved. That suited me just fine. I moved in with 3 boxes: clothes, tools, and documents. The coffee maker sat on the counter like a church bell in an empty town, waiting to be used, but not for celebration. The first morning I brewed a cup in silence, standing barefoot on the cold tile floor. No shouting. No slammed doors. No Zach whining about breakfast. No Amber asking for favors disguised as gratitude. Just heat and quiet. And it felt wrong. Peace, when you've lived without it for years, doesn't arrive as a gift. It arrives as an accusation. Like you've been too weak to demand it earlier. Like you've allowed the noise to define you. Still, I sat there with my coffee, watching the sun crawl up the side of the stucco wall outside, one cracked blind swinging in the AC breeze. And I realized something I hadn't dared say to myself until that moment. They needed me more than I ever needed them. It didn't take long for the world to tilt. The first message came 3 days after I left. Amber, no greeting, no apology. Just, "Can we talk?" Zach stressed about school. I didn't reply. 2 days later, "I think something's wrong with the car. It won't start." Followed by, "We still need you." Still no apology. Just invoices written in casual tone. As if I was still part of the machinery. As if nothing had broken. As if my absence was just an inconvenience to be corrected. They hadn't understood yet. They thought this was a standoff. But it wasn't. I had already left. A week later, a longer message. This time with punctuation like effort had been made. "I know things got heated. I didn't mean to say my kids. That wasn't fair. You've done a lot for us. Can we meet?" No mention of Zach. No mention of what he said. Just things got heated. Like it was a miscommunication. Like I hadn't been erased from my own household with 5 words and a mother's silence. I saved the message. Didn't reply. Instead, I made an appointment. Downtown Phoenix. Office tower with sun-bleached windows and carpet that smelled like formality. The lawyer's name was Jane Miller. Clean desk. Sharp voice. No pictures of family. She didn't offer comfort. She offered clarity. She scanned the documents I brought. Bank records, insurance files, co-signed tuition, shared car title, health plan enrollments, a long paper trail of responsibilities with my name printed in legal font. She didn't sigh or nod in sympathy. She said, "Let's simplify this." Then she drew a circle around my name on every page. "This," she said, "is power. And if they don't respect you, they don't get to use your power. She handed me a pen. From now on, she said, silence. No responses. No explanations. Let them tell the world their version. Let them try to stand on their own. Either they tell the truth or they burn it all down themselves. I signed. One page after another. Every signature felt like a cut cord. When I walked out of that office, the heat hit me like a furnace. But inside I was colder than I'd ever been. That night, another text from Amber. We're falling behind. The tuition office emailed again. Can you just cover it this once and we'll talk? Still no apology. Still no ownership. I let the message sit unread. The next morning, Zach posted a photo online. It was the old baseball cap I gave him the day he made the junior varsity team. Faded, sweat-stained, the bill frayed from habit. He'd worn it everywhere for 2 years. Now it sat on the pavement in the driveway. Framed, cropped, captioned. Some things remind you of the worst people. He didn't tag me. He didn't have to. The venom was clean and public. The likes rolled in from his little echo chamber of teenage rage and half-grown egos. He wanted attention. He got it. Jane saved the screenshot. She started a file. More posts followed. Not directly about me, always just vague enough. Phrases like toxic stepdads, power trips, fake father figures. He was painting a picture. A villain. Tyrant. But what he didn't know, what none of them understood yet, was that I had finally stepped out of their script. They could tell their story however they wanted. I would write mine with silence and subtraction. One morning, Amber called. Not texted, called. I let it ring. Then I picked up. Her voice was tight, frustrated, no longer apologetic. Are you happy? She snapped. We have no internet, no car. Zach's college is about to drop him. Is this a game to you? I didn't argue. I didn't offer comfort. I said calmly, have your attorney call mine. Then I hung up. That was the last time I heard her voice. The papers went through. Legal separation of financial obligations. Revisions to the insurance. Notice of cancellation for joint utilities. Notification of tuition withdrawal submitted through official channels. Every connection legally severed. Jane made sure of it. And when it was done, a sheriff drove up to their door. Paperwork in hand. Official notice. Every line signed. Amber opened the door. The sheriff handed her the envelope. She looked at the seal. Then at the name. She knew. Zach was behind her. Arms crossed, still trying to wear defiance like armor. He glanced at the paper. Then smirked. That's a mistake, he said. The sheriff didn't blink. There's no mistake. He turned and left. And that was that. There was no screaming. No final text. No attempt to mend the bridge. Just silence. The kind that says, you drew the line. And someone finally believed you. I used to think the worst thing a child could say to a stepfather was, you're not my dad. I was wrong. The worst thing they can do is decide you're the villain after you've stopped carrying them. After the lifeline's gone. After the sacrifices are no longer flowing quietly beneath the surface like groundwater. That's when the rebranding starts, the history rewrite, the defamation disguised as teenage angst. Zach didn't just move on. He retaliated. At first it was subtle. Comments on social media that seemed vague, but I knew the target. Screenshots forwarded to me by people who knew, who saw, who watched from the sidelines but said nothing while I bled. The first post said, some men pretend to be father figures, but they're just bank accounts with rules. He didn't tag me. Didn't need to. Everyone in that circle knew who he meant. The boy whose tuition dried up. The boy who lost his car, his plan, his free ride. The caption was strategic, measured, crafted to sound wounded, not cruel. But the next post was bolder. If your stepdad uses money to control you, that's not family. That's abuse. The comments flooded in. Ugh. Same. People don't get how toxic step-parents can be. Cut him out. You're better off. Not one person asked, who paid your rent? Who put gas in your car? Who kept your future running like clockwork while your real father forgot your birthday? No, that part didn't make the feed. That part wasn't aesthetic. I forwarded the posts to Jane. She didn't even blink, just added them to the file. Her eyes scanned them like evidence in a trial she'd already won. "They're building a story," she said. "Let them." I nodded. Then came the video. A shaky phone cam angled to look casual. Zach in his room, that room I had repainted twice, refloored once, filled with light fixtures and desk chairs and every upgrade he ever asked for. He sat on his bed, face serious, eyes glassy like he was practicing sincerity in the mirror. "Some of you know I've been dealing with stuff at home. My stepdad, or, well, my mom's husband, used to help pay for school and things. But when I started setting boundaries, he cut me off. Just like that. No warning. Just gone." He looked away from the camera then. Exhaled. Rehearsed vulnerability. "I'm not saying this for pity. I just want people to know, if someone's love comes with strings, it's not love." He ended it with a faint smile. Soft music faded in. Something lo-fi, melancholic. Fake. Tens of thousands of views. Hundreds of comments. He was building a persona. A victim narrative. And the world ate it up like sugar. Amber didn't call me after that. She didn't need to. Her silence had always been her signature. Her consent. When the tuition withdrawal became official, when the university sent the second and final notice that Zach's enrollment would be dropped without immediate payment, that's when the messages started coming again. Not to my phone. To my lawyer. Voicemail transcripts. Angry, tearful, half-apologetic ramblings from Amber about how I was being vindictive. How Zach was just a kid. How I was ruining his future out of spite. Jane let me read them in her office. She didn't play the audio. She said it was better that way. One line stuck out, printed in black ink on official letterhead. "You can't punish a child for not loving you." I traced the words with my finger. It wasn't about love. It was about respect. And I had gone bankrupt on that front years ago. I signed the next round of documents. These weren't about cancellation. These were about termination. Formal. Irrevocable. Legal. A severing of all financial and legal obligations. A full withdrawal from any co-signed loans, insurance policies, shared ownership agreements. Tuition support? Gone. Health coverage? Cancelled. Even the emergency contact forms wiped clean. Jane filed them all. She said, "If they wanted to treat you like a stranger, we'll make it official." The day the sheriff delivered the final packet, I was already gone. Not just from the house, not just from their lives, but from the system that held them up. Amber opened the door again. This time, she didn't even try to look surprised. Zach stood behind her, still smirking, still posturing. The sheriff handed over the documents and said clearly, for both of them to hear, "All financial ties have been dissolved. Mr. Tisdale has no further obligations to this household." Amber's face went white. Zach scoffed. "He'll come back. He always does." The sheriff didn't flinch. "There's no coming back from this." I heard all this secondhand, from Jane, from official logs, from people who still floated around the edges of their lives. Amber hadn't just lost a support system. She'd lost proof, the ability to say, "He's still helping, he still cares, he's still part of this family, even if it's broken." Now she had nothing to point to but silence. Zach kept posting. More vague statements. More passive-aggressive captions. Some people think cutting off support is strength. Real strength is showing up even when it's hard. Blood isn't everything, but neither is money. I'm not bitter. I'm just healing. Healing. From what? From a roof over your head? From braces paid in full? From weekends where I drove 2 hours to watch you warm the bench in 100-degree heat? From what exactly were you healing? Amber, too, made her quiet moves. She posted throwbacks. Old photos. The three of us smiling. Me behind the grill, Zach holding a sparkler. Captions like, "Remembering better times." Not tagging me. Just framing a scene. She wanted sympathy, not repair. That's when the backlash started to crumble. Zach's friends, the ones who knew, began to say less. Some stopped replying to his stories. Some unfollowed. Quietly, subtly. The internet doesn't need confrontation. It just requires a shift in the wind. And the wind was changing. Because people started asking questions. If your stepdad was so awful, why'd he pay for everything? If he was controlling, why did you only complain after the money stopped? Why did your abuser put his name on your college lease? They didn't ask me. They asked each other. And silence answered. I didn't respond. Not once. Not a single word. I lived in that quiet apartment on the edge of the city, drinking my coffee in peace, fixing up old tools, reading paperbacks with cracked spines and no batteries required. I didn't watch his videos. I didn't scroll her feeds. They had made their story. I had made my exit. And the final balance was simple. They told the world I was nobody. And now they got to live without me. I didn't celebrate. There was no moment of triumph, no vindicated exhale. No dramatic music swelling as I stood on a metaphorical mountain of broken chains. Real endings don't play like movies. They arrive quietly, like rain on a roof that nobody's listening to. I woke up in the apartment, my apartment, the day after the final paperwork was confirmed. The world outside the window was the same. Harsh light cutting across asphalt. A sun that didn't care what I'd lost or walked away from. I made coffee, sat in the same metal back chair I always did, and I felt nothing. Not rage, not relief. Just space. The kind of space that appears when noise finally dies. No texts came that day. No emails. No voicemails from Amber asking for just one more talk or one more favor. Zach didn't post. The static stopped. And I realized something. They'd run out of leverage. There were no more buttons to push, no more strings to pull. Because every string had been cut. And they were too proud to beg. The house in Tucson, the one I had sunk thousands into, poured sweat into, roofed and painted and patched, went quiet too. Not literally, not overnight. But in my life, in my calendar, in my heart, it became just another house. A place I used to stand. I took a trip a week later. Not far. Just north into the pines. Flagstaff. Cooler air. Real silence. I rented a cabin. Not for them, not for family bonding. Not to pretend anything could be fixed. For me, I brought 2 books, 1 pair of boots, and no charger. Up in the woods, with nothing but birdsong and the creak of wind through pine, I stood outside myself for the first time in years. And I asked a question I hadn't had the right to ask until now. What was I if I wasn't providing? What was left of me, now that I wasn't shoveling coal into a furnace that never gave back heat? For a while, the answer was hard to face. Because the truth was, I didn't know. I had built my entire identity around service, around self-erasure, around showing up, even when no one opened the door. I had confused sacrifice with value. I had believed that the more I gave, the more I would be loved. But love isn't built like that. Not real love. Real love grows in respect, in recognition, in being seen not as a utility but as a man. And I was never seen. Not by Zach, whose silence I mistook for teenage aloofness instead of quiet resentment. Not by Amber, who allowed him to redraw the family map until I was just a piece of furniture with a bank account. And not even by myself. I had lied to myself for years, told myself patience would earn me something lasting. That endurance was the same thing as bonding. That showing up, day after day, would one day flip some switch in their hearts. Didn't. You can't turn on lights in a house that never wired for you. I got back to the apartment 2 days later. There was a letter under my door. Handwritten. No envelope. Amber's handwriting. I opened it slowly. Not cautiously, just with tired fingers. It read, Michael, I know you won't pick up. I'm not asking you to. I just wanted to say I'm sorry. I let things go too far. I didn't protect you from the worst parts of this family. I let Zach define the rules. I let his pain become your burden. And you didn't deserve that. You were good to us. I hope someday you can believe that. I don't expect forgiveness. I just needed you to hear it. Amber. There was no return address. No contact number. Just that. You should have felt like closure. Didn't. Because apologies don't patch what's been scorched to ash. Zach never reached out. Not with a message, not with a visit, not with another video. But I heard things. From mutuals. From people we used to share life with, the ones who stopped showing up when the cracks grew wide enough to fall into. The tuition was never repaid. He dropped out mid-semester, picked up part-time shifts at a vape shop, still lived at the house, still acted like he'd been robbed instead of released. Todd, his real dad, never came through, never sent a check, never answered the call. Eventually, Zach stopped posting. No more sad captions, no more victim language, just silence. Maybe it was shame, maybe it was resignation, or maybe, just maybe, he started to see the shape of the truth, the size of the shadow I had cast, not with control but with care. I'll never know, and I don't need to, because here's the truth. I didn't walk away for revenge. I didn't sever ties to punish. I did it to live, to breathe without permission, to exist without proving my worth every hour. Amber's letter sat on the counter for a month before I threw it away. Not in bitterness, just necessity, because you can't keep old ghosts on your table and expect to move forward. One night, I walked out onto the balcony with a beer. The city lights pulsed like distant signals. Somewhere out there, people were still making the same mistake I had made, believing that presence alone earns you a place. And I thought about the other men, the ones who raise children not their own, who pick up the pieces someone else left behind, who show up with open hands and open hearts, hoping it'll be enough. And I thought, God help them if they're shown the door after 16 years. I don't hate Zach. I don't hate Amber. Hate takes energy. I've spent enough. What I feel now is clean, like someone who has finally stepped out of a room filled with smoke and lies. They never said thank you. They never will. But I don't need it, because in the end, I finally gave the one thing I had never given myself, a boundary, and once I drew it, they vanished. So if you're reading this, if any part of this feels familiar, I'll end with a question. The one I still ask myself quietly when the night is too still. Was I wrong? Was I wrong to leave when the giving became empty? Was I cruel to choose peace over legacy? Was I supposed to stay until I was nothing, just so they could have everything? Tell me, would you have endured it? Or would you have walked away too?